Welcome into Basketball by Association. This episode will be much better than the last episode. My name is Arky. That is Joel. Joel, hello, sir.
Hey, there's always that don't write checks your body can't cash axiom. Like you're setting the bar awfully high here.
That's true.
I mean, what if we can't live up to it? It's just so much pressure.
Well, there's a good chance that if I stroke out, this will still be a better episode, to be honest with you, than what I was able to cobble together for a while on our previous episode. And if you haven't listened to it, don't. Yeah, that's fine. You could just move on. Because, Joel, we have ourselves a brand new NBA champion officially crowned. Joel, I don't usually text you during games. I sort of like let you enjoy it. I try to just sort of enjoy it. I try to stay off Twitter as much as possible. Especially
what he really means is we're just not on speaking terms outside of this show. The animosity is just.
I'm not palpable. A big fan. I'm not a big fan of Joel. That's all. Yeah, I just don't like him that much. But we're contractually obligated,
right,
to speak to each other twice a week. But I texted you last night during this game in the final 7 or 8 minutes of this game. Clock time, not lifetime, because heaven knows that doesn't work. And said, Joel, I never text you, but this is a kingmaker game. What Giannis Antetokounmpo is doing right now. Joel, Giannis was special last night.
Indeed, and that text was on the nose. That's a perfect analogy, a kingmaker game. I thought that was perfect the minute I read it, and it holds up. Giannis took a lot of heat during these playoffs. The Bucks took a lot of heat, not only here on this show, but certainly in a lot of other places. And the heat was warranted. There's going to be a whole lot of revisionist history now in throwing Giannis his laurels, which he has absolutely earned. But to me, it's more special to recognize that a lot of that heat was well-deserved. A lot of it was still relevant. And yet the story for me is that those Bucks overcame not bad press, not the haters. They overcame their own weaknesses, which were right there in real time before us, often on a game-by-game basis. And they continued to fight through those things and show that their strengths were that much greater than the weaknesses they had. So I won't buy into what'll happen next, which is so many people go, yeah, Giannis was the best player all year, and Giannis is, like we're going to forget about the free throw problems. We're going to forget about the passive play at times. We're going to forget about the boneheaded coaching and all the things that we've outlined. And to some extent, that's fine. We don't need to dwell on it. But to me, that's almost richer context to go, yeah, this team had some major problems. And yet, series after series, they kept swinging. They kept fighting. When they doubled down on the fact that they were bigger and stronger than just about everybody they faced, they found something really special that nobody could touch. And Giannis, when he played with that aggression and that confidence, that decisiveness, not just to go score the ball, not just because he shot free throws so well in Game 6, which I'm sure we'll get to, but when he made those decisive moves to the basket with a pass, he didn't wait. He made cuts. He was just, and then defensively, he ratcheted up the intensity and the impact that he would have there in order to help get himself and his teammates easier baskets. To me, that is so much richer than just, oh, they're a really great team and they never had any problems coming into it,
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it's so much more fun to talk about a team that is flawed. But just like every team in the NBA, there are flaws. No one goes 82-0 in a season and sweeps the playoffs for the most part. You struggle. And you struggle and you figure your team out. You play through your system, and we gave Budenhoozled a good run. But we were sort of not Budenhoozled. I want to ask you specifically about a move that happened in this series, especially later. regarding Coach Budenholzer, but I don't want to get too far down the line without appreciating still someone who I think doesn't get enough credit. Giannis Antetokounmpo is good. Like, no one seems to want to talk about him, but he's good. But no, in all seriousness, that third quarter and fourth quarter play were electric. Like, it was, so the first quarter goes all their way. Like, we've seen this happen a bunch, all right? One team of these two gets a big first quarter lead. The next quarter, completely gone, right? Mm-hmm. So we watched them come out, and we're both teams sort of get slow to start. And
they were, yeah. And neither team shot the three ball well at all the entire evening, right?
Right. And then the second quarter, we tied up, but we'll get closer, blah, blah, blah. Third quarter, Giannis takes control of the game. And it was there's not a moment where I feel like I could point to and say there was a switch flip, so to speak.
Yeah.
But you could just sort of feel like do you ever watch any of the Marvel movies, Joel?
Mm-hmm.
It felt like in one moment that in that third quarter, well, not one moment, but a couple of moments, he was putting together all of the Infinity Stones of Thanos, right? Like he just started to become unstoppable, right? And he was aggressive. He was attacking the basket. He was great. And he hit the free throws, which were huge, which I think it's very appropriate that his 50th point was a free throw.
Absolutely. And to go 17 for 19 in the greatest game of his career to cap a championship.
Yeah.
Phenomenal storyline.
I think it's also pretty awesome that the last free throw he missed. So, because it's just sort of one of those, that's sort of the past story, and this is just what happened in this game. Giannis was phenomenal, and he deserves all the kudos he gets. Ain't nobody see Bobby Portis coming. I don't know, Joel. I may have blacked out during that last podcast that we did this week. Did you bring up Bobby P to go ham in Game 6 to sort of be the right-hand man and help Giannis sort of weather some of those waters in that team to sort of stay in that game so they could pull away at the very end? Because that was something, man.
So it's probably a testament to Bobby Portis that we didn't talk about him really all that much in the last episode. And by this point in the playoffs, we're taking his contributions for granted. We just kind of take it as a given that energy is going to come off the bench, that here's a guy who can hit an outside shot from the corners, which is super valuable in a modern stretchy four, but he's athletic enough to get above the rim and finish a play, which they don't have a lot of guys who really do that. Giannis can do it. Connaughton can do it a little bit. But Portis gives them that other dimension because, Lopez will play around the basket some. He's done a lot more of that through these playoffs, but PJ Tucker doesn't score, period. Middleton is a mid-range guy, and Holiday's not playing above the rim. So Portis really gives them a dimension that they lack if Giannis is off the floor. But when you pair him with Giannis is what I really like, because Portis can play outside like Brook Lopez does, but when the defense comes to collapse, he's so much quicker than Brook Lopez to be able to get to that dunker spot, finish above the rim, get an offensive rebound. And defensively, he's played with energy. I don't see what Portis did on the defensive end throughout the playoffs as being particularly special. It was solid, but the energy to hit the boards, the energy to pump up the crowd, to be that emotional guy for his teammates too, because you think about it, like Holiday and Middleton are like pretty chill, right?
Right.
And Brook Lopez will get animated at times, but it's not really the same way. PJ Tucker will get animated like in frustration or his own play. And Connaughton will get pumped up with his teammates, and Giannis will too. But Bobby Portis is just like infectious energy all the time, and I think he's understood that that's the role he can play, the character he can be, and he bought into that because that is an intangible too, to always have like the positive, pumped up, juiced guy no matter what's going on. Like that is contagious, and Portis brought that, I think, as much and as importantly off the court and from the sidelines, and when he was in the game, as what he actually did contribute on the court, which was still super important all the time.
Yeah, it was, especially in Game 6 offensively. It was just it was a huge spark for a team that needed a little extra offense because it wasn't coming from the usual sources. And you would talk about that spark plug and that sort of energy. I mean, if dude got teed up for sprinting down the court late in the game with a small lead.
It's because he was high stepping.
Yes.
It's because he was Deion Sanders high stepping. If you wouldn't have high step Bobby, you might not have gotten the tee. They did not want the sports crossover going on there.
Yeah. Oh man, I can't. That's what it was. They're like, whoa, not football,
Yeah.
Basketball, fella.
No
Relax.
Deion here.
You know, I marveled at that game because I text you that thing about the Kingmaker. And that game was still close. It was still like a 4-point game.
Yeah.
And Phoenix had not gone away, and they were,
had the lead at points too. It wasn't like Milwaukee led from pole to pole.
Right. Like Milwaukee, we get up to 6 in the last 6 or 7 minutes, and they get cut down to 4. And the game was well within reach. And as much as sort of game 7s are great in the NBA, I think that performance ending that series, even in 6, was better than a game 7 could have given it. I mean, unless that performance from Giannis comes again in game 7, like, I think the fact that Giannis at home in front of that crowd with that type of performance and the way he did it, I think that's the way the NBA should love that series ended, because there's such now a positive taste in your mouth when you think about the NBA going into another shortened off season, although less shortened than it was last off season. That I think the NBA loves that. I love that. I think that's a beautiful ending for that series. A beautiful, like, listen, Phoenix was better, they would have won, right? Like, if Chris Paul, right. It's like, if it just happened, it happened. But the way Milwaukee was able to cap it because of the 2-time MVP and the Finals MVP this year, was able to go for 50 and be so great from the free throw line and do it at home. I don't think the NBA hates that at any stretch or by any stretch.
And yes, those are all huge positives for the NBA marketing campaign. I honestly think one of the best PR pieces that they've got now, or imagery, is 65,000 people outside of Fiserv Forum in the Deer District in Milwaukee.
Great
Everything is just rocking. And, you could watch and be a fence rider and just kind of watching the NBA finals. And if you don't really care about the Bucks, you might be like, oh yeah, it's cool that Giannis guy went for 50, good series, whatever. But the vibe to see, oh, wait, here's a small market team that hasn't won in 50 years, that if I'm a casual, like super casual NBA fan, I don't really hear all that much about, except maybe I see Giannis jerseys out in public every once in a while. Like, for me to look and go, 65,000 people outside of the arena, maybe the NBA's got something here. Maybe it is still cool. And despite, the pandemic slowdown and there was certainly like some bad press flying around from certain corners of the political spectrum, like during the social justice stuff of last year, especially. But I don't think any of that matters. Like, you see that and you go, wow, there's a lot of people into this, and it ain't even like New York or LA.
Right.
I mean, they're turning out for this. Like, I think that's a huge piece.
I agree. I agree. And I don't even know what the TV ratings numbers, and frankly, I don't care, to be honest with you. I think this, for someone who loves stories and endings and the way things can end versus the way sometimes they do, with sweeps or blowouts. And we had a couple of, near 20-point victories in this series, but we also had a lot of competitive basketball in this series. And the last game was competitive up until basically the final minute.
And it's better to have those blowouts early. And it didn't feel boring to have essentially blowouts in the first 3 games, because it felt like punch and then counter punch, right?
Yeah.
The Suns played hot at home. They were up. Milwaukee was reeling. But then you get to game 3, Milwaukee finds their legs, and Milwaukee lands a square punch to win by 20 points or whatever it was in game 3. Like, they were in control. And then for things to tighten back up in these last 3 games, for all of them to be close, they weren't necessarily like down to the wire in the traditional sense, but they were close the whole way through. And it wasn't until the last maybe couple minutes that any team, the Bucks, obviously all three times, got that like upper hand. You would much rather have it that way than like tight games early, and then all of a sudden it's blowout city in the last three, and you go, yeah, it was great, but there wasn't a whole lot of suspense going on there.
Yeah, like the Suns figured him out or something. Like there was no response.
Also, is this and I should have looked this up beforehand, but I think this is the first time now that somebody's dropped a 2-0 lead since the Mavericks did it to the Wade and Shaq Heat. In
maybe the first time
or something like that.
Yeah, it may be the first time since. I know it's happened. I think this was the fifth time.
Yeah,
that it happened overall. But I think this is the first time since then. If I'm not mistaken, I think the team has gone up 2-0 in the series. I think like 35 or 6 times. I think, and this was like the fifth time that the team down 2-0 had come back to win that series. Chris Middleton, man, him and Giannis and the sort of the core, the culture of Milwaukee basketball. Chris Middleton was going through late in that game, and he was hitting mid-range shots when it couldn't just be Giannis,
and hitting big free throws too,
and big free throws. Giannis gets all the love, and a lot of it deservedly so. But I mean, Chris Middleton's been there for a huge chunk of this too. What do you think?
He's been there since Giannis was. They've been there 8 years.
I thought it was the year after. It was the same year.
Yeah, that at least that's what Malika Andrews said last night. I'll look at that here.
Yeah, it may be right, but they've been there almost, if not exactly, the same amount of time. What'd you think of his performance? Not only just sort of, well, I guess especially in Game 6, and the fact that those two guys who have been sort of the core, it wasn't just a super team. Like Giannis wanted to talk about after the game. It was these two guys that built this core up and built this team and had it built around them, that those two guys were able to bring home that trophy or keep that trophy home, to be honest.
I think and just looking at it, yeah, Middleton has been there 8 years.
Okay, so yeah, same amount of time.
He's been there the exact same amount of time as Giannis, so they got to that team together. Middleton did play 1 year in Detroit. He was drafted by the Pistons. He spent time in the G League. Him coming over to Milwaukee was just as a prospect, like he was an also ran prospect, and so there's kind of that tie-in with Giannis, who was a touted prospect in that nobody knew what he was, and he came out of left field, but there wasn't that expectation. So for both of these guys to have stuck it out with each other, to be NBA champions, to have had some real highs and lows. I mean, the Bucks, they've been building for a long, long time. You think about Jason Kidd before Mike Budenholzer got here, but they were pretty bad the first couple years of the Middleton and Giannis partnership, and getting a little better every year. And then you start to get to the top of the regular season mountain and you flame out a couple of times. And now people are starting to say you're chokers and all this other stuff. Like, it's sweet. It's really sweet, because to have one guy stick with a team for 8 years and be able to carry them, but to have both of your core guys do this, and the humility that you've never heard Giannis or Middleton carp about the other one getting too much attention or anything like that. They both have fit their roles. They both seem to very much understand how one needs the other. Obviously, Giannis is the better player, but Giannis is not the shooter. He's not the free throw guy, and a lot of the crunch time possessions do flow through Chris Middleton.
Mm-hmm.
Middleton wouldn't get those looks if Giannis wasn't such a threat. And Giannis being humble enough to realize, yeah, that's my guy to take these shots, and he's not going to sit there and complain about the fact that, oh, I'm the MVP. Why am I not getting the crunch time shots? Think about how many guys in the NBA would piss and moan about that.
Mm-hmm.
Not getting the ball in the final possessions, and this is my pay grade, and these are my accolades, and all that stuff. And you've never once heard Giannis say that, and nor have you ever had Middleton go, "Yeah, you know what? I'm really good. I'm an all-star, I'm a multi-time all-star. Maybe I'd be better on my own team where I could get the spotlight, and I wouldn't have to be second fiddle to this guy." Like, you don't have any of that. And I think a lot of that comes from obviously their personalities, but also that background. Like, they both got there together. They were both unheralded, and they've been building and working to this thing, and it has not been an easy road at all.
It was so, I think, heartwarming and touching, and you could sort of feel it through the screen when Malika Andrews was talking to Giannis and asked him the usual 5 or 6 questions or so, and then she brought up Chris Middleton, and then like he almost interrupted her. Like he basically looked over to Chris and was like, "We did it, man. We did it." Like you could sort of feel like the love and the respect there that they know that they changed the fortunes of a city from a basketball standpoint over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, that they stuck it out together, and through the thick and the thin, they finally got to the top of the mountain. And it's got to be not only so gratifying just to win it, but to know that you guys could have gone almost anywhere you wanted in the last 3, 4, 5 years, right? You could have if you wanted to, and you didn't. You created something that's truly unique in today's NBA. That I could feel all of that through the screen watching that in the postgame.
And I said it maybe a week and a half ago that winning one championship in a small market is the equivalent of winning 3 in a big market. You think about like how much that championship meant to the Cleveland Cavaliers when they finally got over the hump against the Warriors and finally broke the city's long-standing drought, or the Raptors, which is not a small market at all, but for the Raptors to get a NBA championship, you do that like what the Bucks just did, and on the 50th anniversary, or by year anyway, of their last title, and all of the good basketball but not great basketball that's been played in Milwaukee, all the times that they were an also-ran or even an afterthought, and then the occasional really, really good teams that just, never made it to an NBA Finals. For Middleton and Giannis to do this, they're not only immortalized in a place that truly is sports crazy, like is as sports crazy as, some of the southern states and as New York can get about their teams, and as anywhere. Like, they are immortalized now forever with this team. And that's super special for all of the reasons you just said. I also think that this solidifies that Giannis will finish his career in Milwaukee. And I had been predicting this kind of from the start. It was one of the reasons why I was barely cheering for the Bucks over the Suns. I really wanted the Suns would have been great too. Such a good storyline, and they've played the right way. They're a cool team. You hope that they can get back again. But there's always that fear with the small markets that you get that transcendent once-in-a-lifetime superstar. But because the curve is so high to win a championship for a small market, and it's so easy later to jump to a different place that's a bigger market, more money involved with the different advertisements and things that you'll get. And they've got the assets and the brand cachet to be able to bring in other stars around you. And it's easy to tap out and just go play with other players and chase your championship that way. And again, it's not necessarily wrong to do that. If we go by the mentality that championship above all else, we can't really hold it against a player when they go, yeah, championship above all else, I want my ring, right? And that's not evil of them to do that. But for him to stay, to get it, and for it to have happened, for the organization to make good on their promise to him and he to make good on his promise to the organization, I am really, really hopeful and rather confident now that he will be that rarest of rare superstar. And as the years go by, I think it becomes even more rare. He will be that guy that will stay his whole career in that place, because not only does this championship mean an inordinate amount to the city of Milwaukee, but it will mean that outsized amount to Giannis that probably, and again, I'm not the guy, I don't want to play armchair quarterback or armchair psychiatrist, but it's probably enough cachet to overcome regardless of what else happens outside of like some sort of major personality conflict with ownership or those things you can't really plan for in the future and you hope never come. But this is great for small market basketball in general if he can stay, and especially if they can get another one, you know. And I don't want to do that already and go, let's talk about the next championship. Can they win next year? Just let everybody enjoy that and don't get into that crap yet. But at the same time, like, it's not unthinkable with where he's at in his career and how good he is that this is not the last championship we see for Giannis.
He's 26.
Yeah.
And he's 20. I mean, all of this time that he has been at the top of this league as far as how well he's played, the multiple time MVPs, now the final. He's 26. He's getting to his prime. Like he is comfortably starting to stride into his prime.
Now, granted, like LeBron, starting early and playing as much as he has, there's going to be a lot of mileage quick and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a big window for Giannis, much less so for Holiday and Lopez, slightly less for Chris Middleton, although Middleton's, 27, 28. I got to look at that. Maybe he's 29 now. Yeah, he's 29. So yeah, I mean, there's still that window of that partnership between these two for sure, and then you just kind of try to shuffle those pieces around them and see what you get. Oh,
show. Let me ask you this, briefly, in just a couple of sentences on this, and maybe you can't because I don't want our BbA bite you. Well, I don't know. Who really cares? Like it's the World Champion Edition. So I have one strategery question, and then I want to end on sort of the Suns and what we think about how sort of this series ended for them. I heard Tim Legler, who I very much enjoy as an analyst, and I think he's very, very smart, very good, sort of point out that he noticed the guy we said may Budenhoozle us, made some adjustments that he really, really liked. And one of those seemed to be, we've gotten used to sort of in crunch possessions and crunch time, last 4 or 5 minutes of a game, that there would be Giannis, here you go. You put it on your back. A lot of ISO ball with him and sort of work it that way and got to go to the guy who's brought us here. But especially in this game, we didn't see as much of that in those last 4 or 5 minutes. We saw a lot more of the high screen dive where, you just toss that back out to Middleton or something. You find him cut it in, off the screen. And it worked a few times in the last 4 or 5 minutes to give them really, really important baskets when it looked like Phoenix was just one defensive possession from being able to maybe tie the game. What do you think of Budenhoozle's? That's not fair. He won the game. What do you think of Mike, Coach Bud? And that adjustment, maybe in particular, that it was possibly coaching in that last few minutes, not just Giannis taking over, that may have helped put them over the edge. And something that we've carved ourselves and harped on it too, about that ISO ball, that it wasn't as prevalent in the going down the stretch in Game 6.
Whether it was a scheme change via coaching or just coaching reminders to stick much closer to the principles that they've been founded on since he got there, of that ball movement, of that unselfishness, we probably won't know unless Bud wants to divulge those secrets later on here, or some of the players maybe hint at it. So that'll be hard to know. But the ball movement, not just in crunch time, but as the series went along, and even in the Atlanta series coming out of what had been so wonky against Brooklyn, that had not worked, I think is the reminder that for as good as Giannis is, he is at his most dangerous when he is in the open court, if he's the one initiating, or if he is receiving the ball within the secondary action in some way, and then being able to go to work in a few short, decisive moves, versus Giannis standing, waiting, then getting into a dribble motion, then looking to score. He certainly can do it. It's a weapon within his repertoire. You need to have that. He does score off of it, but that's not where he is most dangerous. He's not a Carmelo Anthony ISO guy, and Anthony's one of the best ever. So maybe that's not fair to compare him in that way. But when Giannis is moving downhill out of a pick and roll, either as the ball handler or the roller, when he is receiving the ball as a backdoor cutter, when he's receiving it as a post up, but it's a post up already in motion, not necessarily a traditional, I'm just going to stand and hold for the ball, though he certainly can and does do that against smaller guys, and then just can outsize them, which, you know, Bridges and Jay Crowder were overmatched against that move quite often. That was a huge turn. And then for other guys to remember that, look, if Giannis is going to work, you have to keep moving. You cannot just stand and watch and wait. There's got to be that continuous movement, those cutters. I didn't see anything that was like particularly special and like groundbreaking, but at the same time, you saw them play the way that you know they were supposed to be playing, because that's the way Budenholzer teams have played. That's the way the Bucks did play at their best during the regular season.
Well, that's why
the way they did play during the Heat season, right?
Yeah,
or the Heat series.
That's why we'd get so frustrated with them. We're like, hey, we've seen you do it. Like, I don't know why you just so often go away from what has been clearly something very good to you. And you're right, Giannis, when he's attacking the basket and in motion, is just he's unbelievable. Like he's unbelievable. He's an unbelievable finisher, and it's magnificent to watch. When
Giannis is decisive, it allows other guys to be decisive too. They can make their cut and know that he's doing something. But when Giannis was tentative and standing and waiting, everybody else then doesn't know how to play off of that, because they don't know what he's going to do next, because it seems like he doesn't know. And yeah, it may only take 3-4 seconds before he starts to do his thing, but 3-4 seconds in the scheme of the shot clock is an enormous. And then there were lots of possessions that were, you know, at their worst, there were possessions that were 7, 8, 9 seconds before anything was really happening, and you were getting dribbles to nowhere, and it disjointed everything. So it was, you know, Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy who were saying, your team is going to go as your superstar goes. And if he's playing tentative, they're going to do that too. And sometimes that sounds like such a cliche, but in the case of the Bucks and Giannis being so critical to everything they do, absolutely true. You would have hoped that like Middleton or Holiday would have been able to take over, because those are both all-star guys, take over in those moments and become more assertive themselves. But you kind of did see that, because at their worst, when Giannis was off the floor, is when the Bucks were playing better for some of those really dark moments during the Brooklyn series, and very fewer moments when they would fall back into those bad habits at times. But yeah, they did break out of it. That is a testament to coaching.
Final thing I want to talk about is about the Phoenix Suns and the way that the season is wrapped up for them. Such a extraordinary high for the duration of the season, almost completely. It's the fourth series a Chris Paul led team, or at least a Chris Paul team, has gone up 2-0 in the postseason and has lost that series.
That's crazy. I didn't know that, but yeah, that makes sense.
It is. It lost another couple of like the 3-1 series that he was on and lost in OKC. So I don't want to make it necessarily just about Chris Paul, because Chris Paul made a couple shots over Giannis, falling away late in that game to try to keep his team in it. That team looks like what you had pointed out early on in the series and even before, that they just needed someone big that could get offense, and they just didn't have enough of that to be able to compete with the size of Milwaukee. And DeAndre Ayton got into foul trouble in that game, game 6, that they were close. They were darn close, but they ran up against a bad matchup, and the bad matchup beat them out.
Absolutely.
So I should actually end with the question: what do you think of the Phoenix into this series, and how should Phoenix feel going forward?
The pairing of Ayton and Booker is really exciting. Mikal Bridges is a young guy. Cam Johnson is a young guy. Cam Payne is young. You've got a nice core there of youngsters to continue building this around. Jay Crowder's not old by any means. Chris Paul's going to be a wild card. He was so integral to what they needed and what they were going to do. But at the same time, you look at the age of Chris Paul, And if all of a sudden he goes, yeah, my best shot to win a ring is not with the Suns, I'm a free agent, or I can try to orchestrate some type of a trade, and maybe I need to go ring chasing to the Lakers, or, that's a rumor that, of course, was going to come out already because the LA media and New York media always put themselves first in all of the rumors because they know it sells copy. But, that's out there already, and it makes some sense. So Paul will be kind of the offseason wild card. What happens with him? It's also a bit of a dice roll if you're the Suns to go, okay, did he teach us everything he knows, and will his contributions be as critical going forward? I think they certainly would for next year. The other difficult thing about this, if you're the Suns, is you go, we're really good and we've got a really bright future, but man, it's still the Western Conference.
Yeah.
And we all kind of lucked out that the Lakers fell apart when they did.
Everyone's going to be healthy next year, and there's going to be some adjustments, obviously, to these rosters.
Yeah, the Clippers aren't going to
be harder.
Away. Utah conceivably will be a very good team again. Denver will be a very good team again. Dallas has certainly got the Luka upside, and whatever happens there. Portland, we don't know if they'll be as good. We got to see what happens with Damian Lillard, but it's the Western Conference, and it's really, really hard every single year. So
do you think this Phoenix Suns team has staying power?
I don't think they're the favorites in the Western Conference by any means, because I don't think anybody is a favorite in the Western Conference. The Lakers will always be on paper if they get healthy and reload, which that they're going to do. But you look at the Eastern Conference in the same way, and like the Brooklyn Nets are already the on-paper favorites for next year.
Yes.
And Philly's going to be good, and Milwaukee's going to be good. So we are in this period of time where there's really good teams in both conferences. There's not a clear-cut head and shoulders, group that's just better than everybody else. So the Suns' future is bright, but it is not a given. Not that it ever is, but there's certain teams where you're like, yeah, they'll probably be back next year. And I don't know that I could say that about these Suns, despite how good Ayton and Booker, especially, and Bridges can continue to become, and Cam Johnson too.
Well, you're right. Brooklyn's plus 195 going into next season. By the way, Milwaukee won at plus 550. They were plus 550 going into the season to win the championship. Milwaukee's the third favorite on the list from FanDuel that I found. The Lakers are number 2 at plus 600. Milwaukee at plus 850. The Clippers and Suns are at plus 1,200 to win the NBA championship this next season, which, it's just July 21st as we're recording this. Like, I don't know if you really want to put money down on any of this.
Don't make those bets yet. You got to let free agency pan out before you're going to make an educated bet on it.
Or at least 24 hours after the parade. Give it to the championship 24 hours, and then the parade. Maybe see how Devin Booker reacts in Tokyo, at least, or something on that flight that he has to go on. By the way, if you're Devin Booker, how fun's it got to be on a private plane with just who is it? It's Holiday and
Middleton, yeah,
Middleton.
I didn't even think about that.
It's like, this is cool. Really glad I signed up for this.
If I'm Devin Booker, I'm asking to ride the whole way up in the cockpit with the pilot and the co-pilot. Like, just let me sit in the deadhead seat, and I don't even want to look at those guys. I don't want to talk to them. They're both nice guys, but I don't want any part of that.
By the way, how about the fact also that PJ Tucker basically beat his entire old Houston Rockets team throughout the playoffs to get there?
That is fun. And, and PJ Tucker, a former Phoenix Sun himself. So to be able to make that happen, pretty cool. If you're Torrey Craig, you're upset because you were a Milwaukee Buck earlier this season, and you just happen to run into him in the finals, and it doesn't work out. But yeah, and even Frank Kaminsky, a former Wisconsin Badger, and a lot of ties to the state of Wisconsin, and on the wrong side of that too. So there were some kind of fun, weird connections, but there always are when you dig into any of these rosters. Every year there's weird storylines like that.
Oh, there's a picture of him out there that I saw on Twitter of PJ Tucker with Trevor Ariza, Clint Capella, James Harden, and Chris Paul, like in the same encore 5. And you're like, well, throughout this playoffs, PJ Tucker went through all of them to win this world championship, which is, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to be able to see that. All
and
right,
if I'm
Joe.
PJ Tucker, I'm texting them and gloating about it every
Oh.
day for the next 365 days.
Are you kidding me? Listen, Giannis may be. Did you see Giannis, by the way? The morning after was going to Chick-fil-A with the championship trophy between his legs and and ordering a 50-piece. Wink, wink, nod, nod. You know, I mean, dude, you gotta love that guy, right? Like,
I hope he shared some of it. I mean, there's got to be a passenger in the car. Or...
He went with the trophies, like you share with the trophies. Get that. But one quick aside, I just want to throw this out there. I can never get used to Adam Silver at a trophy ceremony.
Yeah,
it's always just an extra awkward, like, and your Milwaukee Bucks. You're just like, all right, buddy, relax. You're just hand it to him. You're fine. You don't have to try.
I will say that, yeah, David Stern was better at that aspect of things, and David Stern was by no means great. But yeah, Silver is always just like awkward. We're like, could we just get the audio recording of you saying that? That'd be great for all of us.
Joel, because I know he's practiced it. He's gotten the feedback before, and he's practiced it to be like, how do I get the proper inflection? The Milwaukee Bucks.
How do I show human emotions without busting a servo?
I about to say, well, you don't if you're not human. So we're on to you, Adam. We're on to you. All right, Joel, our BbA bite's usually shorter, but we got a world champion. We had to extend it.
You know what? Screw this. I'm not even calling it the bite. It's just going to be BbA NBA Finals wrap-up edition.
Boom!
Right? That's what we're going to do.
You guys already know the title because you've seen it in the description before we got there, but we named it at the end of the show. So you got it 50 minutes before we did.
Plot twist.
Chapow. All right, well, that's going to do it for us on this here pod. We'll be back throughout the off season, weekly and stuff to talk about. And we got the draft coming up in a couple next week. Actually, we got to talk about free agency for both of the conferences because it's another shortened off season again, Joel. It's not as short as last season. Yep. We're close to getting back to a regular schedule, but you know, I had a friend text me like 3 nights ago. No, it was on Saturday when the game was happening. And he said, why are the NBA Finals still on? It's like, you completely out of the blue?
Yeah.
You completely out, like, you realize what's been happening? Yeah, like, this is the latest we've had to go watch these finals. So.
Absolutely. And just the public service announcement, now that the finals are done, we'll be going down to one show per week going forward. Typically Sundays, but it might be Wednesdays as well. You can always find the shows on YouTube. You know, like, subscribe, set the little bell button so that you get the notifications when the new episodes come out. And if you want the audio-only versions, Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you, everybody, for riding along with us this entire season and through the championship. It's been fun, but ball never sleeps. So we got lots of cool shows coming up next. Don't go anywhere.
Yeah, and if you're willing to make a little money, Joel's Minnesota Timberwolves plus 18,000 to win the title next year. All
right, I got a nickel on that.
Okay, well, I mean, it's still not the worst odds, to be honest. There's like 6 teams below, but you know, hey, real quick, let's have fun. I know, I'm sorry, I can't help it.
We have had so many real quicks.
Yeah, sorry, real, but the other ones have been quick. We just haven't gotten to the end of the show. Can you name the 5 teams with worse odds than your Minnesota Timberwolves?
Cleveland, Detroit, Houston.
That's 3 of them. They're all of these, by the way, are plus 25,000.
Orlando.
That's correct. One more. Dude, they were putrid this year. They lost by like 50 in a game.
The Thunder.
That's right, the Okc Thunder. So if you're willing to take a shot on it, you know.
Bye.